us a little bit about your story when you came to Australia with your family in 1980. Why did you do that? What was it about South Africa that made you want to come to Australia?
Well, South Africa was in a period of political unrest. There were, earlier in the late 60s, there were the riots of Sharpeville, and that was up in the north. And then these unrests came down south, and there are suburbs known as Nyanga and Guguletu, which was in predominantly African populations, and what they call squatter camps with people from various backgrounds. And at 3 o'clock in the morning you could hear the bulldozers go in and demolish those houses, and you could hear the screams of people for miles around. And that's when we decided this is no place to bring up any kids. And Australia looked like, the very promising country. It was the first country, I think, to introduce sanctions against South Africa, and they chose sport, and that really hit against the South Africans because they were like the Kiwis, they loved their sport. That was really the motivating factor. We wanted to bring our kids up in a normalized environment.
Your new country in the early 80s and early 90s, what was this new country like? Was it as good as you thought it would be?
I'll tell you what, it was pretty exciting. It was a newfound freedom. We could walk around late at night. Initially, when we rented a flat, we were locking the doors, and then realized, it's amazing the freedom that people had here. They could walk around late at night, you were not harassed. And one of the most amazing things was walked into the pub. I'd missed a bus, I walked into a pub, and these guys were standing around and said to me, "G'day mate, where were you from? And you're looking at a good tip." I said, "No, I've just finished work." He said, "Where are you from?" And I said, "I'm from Africa." And they said, "Which part?" And I said, "South Africa." And the guy looked at me and he said, "You poor bastard." And I thought, "Oh my God, this bloody racism again." And he said to all his mates, "Hey, this guy's from the deep south of Africa," and they shouted me a beer, and I got so pissed because these guys welcomed me to their country. And this was quite an experience because here I was, this darkish complexion guy, surrounded by all these white fellows, and they were treating me like an absolute hero.
Marilyn and Bernard, hi. Now, something happened in April 1996. Can you tell us something about that?
Well, we had returned from shopping to find the police at our house and entering our backyard, and we weren't sure what had happened. And then we were told the police were called because Garth had thrown a brick over the fence. And the police spoke to him and they said he wasn't feeling too well. And we were quite shocked about that. We said, "We'll take him to the doctor." We took him to the doctor that evening, and the doctor then said, "We think we'll take him to see a psychiatrist." And an appointment was made to see the psychiatrist the very next day. By the time we got to the psychiatrist, he had settled. Whatever had happened to him, he had apparently been out with some school friends, and they'd experimented in some substance, and he'd suffered an excruciating headache. By the time we got to the psychiatrist, he had settled, the drug was all gone, but the psychiatrist suggested that they'll call in the CAT team, which is a crisis assessment treatment team. However, by the time we got home, they were already waiting for us, and they then prescribed 2 drugs for Garth. I remember it very, very clearly. One was stelazine, 15 milligrams, and the other one was temazepam, 10 milligrams. And they said, "We'll be back within an hour, this should settle him a bit more." Well, with what happened in the next hour, I think was the turning point and has sent us in a downward spiral. We were absolutely shocked because by the time they returned, Garth was suffering a psychosis to the extent that they took him to hospital.
Marilyn, how were you feeling about what was unfolding here?
I didn't know what was going to happen to Garth. I was scared after they took him away to hospital.
And what happened when he did get to the hospital, and about 24 hours later we got a call from the hospital and saying, and then we were told, your son's not coming home, he's been sectioned, and a bit of red flags started rising there because we had no idea what it meant, but section did sound very ominous. And then we were told that he'd been put on an involuntary treatment order and we could not take him home. And that's when I guess things we realized was not running according to plan. Things were beginning to deteriorate and it was getting into something quite beyond our control.
Working with Ranzab, I started holding the college in pretty high esteem because I was pretty much impressed with the code of ethics. But it wasn't too long when I felt something wasn't quite right here. There appeared to be conflict, and one of those fundamental issues was actually the code of ethics, and something which stuck in my mind, you know, and I must draw reference to it again. And this is the college code of ethics, and it was principle number 4, I think, where it says, psychiatrists shall obtain consent from the patient before undertaking any procedure or trauma or treatment. And this is when I began to be very troubled by what was happening, because contrary to all these principles and statement of care and the Hippocratic oath, first do no harm, things were not going on a really good trajectory. Garth seemed to be getting worse. Psychiatrists at the area mental health services seemed to be distancing themselves from me. The more information I tried to get from them, the less they were giving me. And that's why I took to reading books, consulting, particularly, the Australian Drug Guide. I started looking up medical tests, most of which I was fairly familiar with, and then came across, anatomy of an epidemic and numerous others. And one thing that struck me was, rethinking psychiatric drugs. I then started having discussions with psychiatrists in the college and asked them what they thought about the treatment of my son. Some of them were totally appalled. For example, the fact that they were shocking my son, giving him electroconvulsive therapy, the fact that they were tying him to a bed. Some found this totally abhorrent and said, no, this is definitely not the case, something is wrong. And yet, ironically, despite me discussing this, it went on, and that's when I discovered I was working for an institution that was actually harming my son. And I decided I was going to try and find the root cause here. What was the problem? Was it me? Was it my son? Was it his treatment? And then it occurred to me that here is something wrong. This is a money-generating corporation which did anything to increase profits. And then it dawned on me, what price for silence? To what extent are these psychiatrists being paid that their ethics have gone through the window, that they've long since forgotten that they were once doctors? I realized I was becoming this lone crusader, a David, fighting Goliath. And the Goliath was far greater than I ever anticipated. This was not just, confined to a particular hospital. This was a worldwide phenomenon. And the web of integration between what they call CMEs, continuing medical education, the link between hospitals, the funding link, the government supporting it, the Commonwealth pharmaceutical benefit scheme. Everything was related. One of the difficulties I had, the closer I put, the microscope to what was going on, the more I realized I was hitting my head against a solid brick wall. I was not going to win here. My approach remained the same. I followed proper procedures, lodged complaints to the relevant authorities. And then I got the realization that they knew which path I was going to take, and they knew I was going to lose at the end. It started affecting my health. The family had spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on court cases and hiring lawyers, all to no avail. And then I realized there was only one way that I could bring about change, because the harder I pursued on my present trajectory, the more difficult it became for me to even bring to their attention that what they were doing was harming my son. But then it was me, Joe Blow, up against the establishment. And the only way I felt that change could be brought about was, in fact, from a grassroots level, but not on my own. I needed help. This needed to get out there. People needed to be known what was going on, and it really needed a whistleblower. And I was just at the periphery of trying to uncover what was going on. And it finally dawned on me that I needed to change my approach. What exactly did they want in order to release my son? And this is a path that we're trying to pursue now. It's badly affected my health, it's affected my family, and at this point in time he still remains incarcerated 23 hours a day in a locked room. At the end of the day, I was not the psychiatrist, I was not the lawyer, I was a mere dad trying to do the best I could under the circumstances.